Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn is back for our monthly chat today, Thursday, July 27th, 2023. I forgot to put up a post that you were going to be coming on this morning, so we can pretty much talk about whatever we want to talk about because nobody's going to be watching this live. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, reminding you that Senator Quinn joins us on the last Thursday of every month right here on DrydenWire. So if you've missed any of our previous chats, you can find a recording of those and all of our live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, on our Facebook, well, right here on our Facebook page under the videos tab, or on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/DrydenWire or just search DrydenWire on YouTube. Also, if you have a question for Senator Quinn, probably not today, or a topic you would like for us to discuss, let us know in the comments during today's live show. Romaine, good morning. Welcome back.
Morning. Happy to be here with just you and no one else watching. So, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, nobody's going to be watching the show. I completely forgot to put something up. So we started doing this monthly chat, the last Thursday of every month. When you became senator, that was, January you were in. So every month, though, up until now, you have been in the office because I recognize the background. Right now, are you in like a secret location? Because all I see is like a all-white background there. Where are you today?
It's a super secret location. I'd have to kill you if I told you, Ben.
Okay. Well, again, nobody's watching, so you can tell me.
To my pantry, so
it's at home.
Not that secret.
How have you been?
I'm good. Yes, I'm home today. It's nice to be home in the summer. We're not as busy in the building. The building's pretty quiet, and so that allows us more time to get the things done that we can't do when we're stuck in Madison.
What do you mean? How do you get stuff done when you're not in Madison? And I don't mean that sarcastically. Like, what do you mean?
Right. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, not just in the building. Right now, when you're in the building, the most important job I do is vote. That's what I'm elected to do is cast my vote how my district, wants me to vote. And so, but there's a lot that goes into the job that's not just in Madison. So it's meeting with folks, sharing ideas, having discussions. It's like right now during the summer, we gear up for the fall session. So we just got the budget done, and now we work on bills, ideas. We have meetings with interest groups to get the ball rolling and ready when we hit the floor again come September.
Now, when you say interest groups, isn't that like a negative thing, or what people would perceive as a negative thing? Like, oh, the interest groups, right? I mean, the fact that you said it must not be, though, right? So you meet with interest groups. Give us an example. Like, what is an interest group that you would meet with?
Yeah, I guess I would. I mean, anyone that contacts our office is an interest group, right? Because technically they're lobbying for something. You may not be a registered lobbyist, but when you call me, you're lobbying me because you want me to vote a certain way. So like this week, Monday night, there was a Bayfield-Ashland Towns Association meeting. I couldn't make that one, but I sent to my in-district staff, Stacy, to that. Tuesday night, there was, where was I Tuesday? Oh, I was in Bayfield. Bayfield County had a board of supervisor meeting. So I went up there and joined them for their picnic ahead of time and then addressed the board during their meeting. Talked about some of the budget items that are most pertinent to them up in Bayfield County. And then last night I jumped over to Shell Lake. The Washburn County had their Towns Association meeting. And so it's again a meeting with all the township folks that get together quarterly for that county. And tonight is Burnett County. So I'll try to jump over there. I have to be in cable to make an event for Chan's Green. So it's those kinds of things that I can't do if I'm in Madison, which why I have in-district staff like Stacy, so she can go there and be a direct line for the office. But it's really good for me to try to be in the room so people can directly address me if they have questions, concerns, or issues.
Yeah, I was having a phone conversation with Burnett County Sheriff Tracy Finch, who's a very good friend. I respect her so much personally, professionally. She's amazing. And she had commented, because I believe you guys had a conversation about something recently, and she had said, he doesn't really know Burnett County quite yet. And I kind of took, you're my friend, so I'm like, I don't know. I kind of took offense to that. Not really offense, because I don't get offended by anything. But I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, he's not really over here that much. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Then again, when he was in the assembly, Burnett was not a part of that district. And now he's a Senate. But since he's been in the Senate, it's been in Madison for, the first 6 months. You're right.
Right.
He really hasn't been over there for doing what you're talking about. So that's kind of what you're doing, is going to these places, especially Burnett and other areas now in the 25th Senate District that weren't a part of your 75th Assembly District, that I got to get to know these people other than just phone calls and emails. I got to start going to some of these things so I can actually hear directly from them. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like during the campaign, we spent a lot of time in Burnett County. There's a lot of groups that met on a monthly basis, and we try to be everywhere we can. I know Representative Angie Sappick and I did hold a listening session over in Grantsburg, trying to give folks an opportunity to meet us, address us. But you're right, and Angie's just as new over there too, because she's never held office. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the people in Iron County as well as I do Washburn. I don't know the people in Ashland County. Well, I know them pretty good now because we've been dealing with a number of budget issues, but I don't know those people as well as Barron County. So it's important to get everywhere. That's why Wednesday night I popped up to Bayfield County, the furthest point in our seat. But Bayfield County matters just as much as Barron County. So I try to split my time.
Really, but okay.
When I go to a meeting, I tell every county they're the most important. So.
Oh boy, you must have taken a thing from Fitzy. I'm everybody's sheriff every time, because I always try to bring up the fact that he's a Democrat. I'm everybody's sheriff. I'm like, well, I don't think that's on the ballot. I don't think you can vote for everybody's sheriff. So I want to talk to you.
I've never heard of the Everybody Party, but he's apparently part of it.
Apparently he is a part of it. So at the last month when you were on, because we do this again, the last Thursday of every month, it was the day before, I believe, the budget went to the governor. So we went through a lot of the things that were on there. It was very informative. And I'd asked, like we do at the end of every show, what do you think we'll be talking about next month? And it was, well, probably the governor's, what he does with the budget. What does he veto? What does he sign, etc. So I want to get into that. But first, I want to do a couple quick hits here just because they were just recent that we put on our website. One was from Spooner Health CEO Mike Schaefer, and our headline was Spooner Health CEO recognizes Senator Quinn for his work on healthcare workforce initiative. And here's just a quick pull out from that. Mike Schaefer said Senator Quinn led a budget motion with his colleagues on the Joint Finance Committee to increase funding by $5 million for a program that provides matching grant dollars up to $125,000 for hospitals that create allied health training programs in rural communities. Senator Quinn listens to us and acts on the unique challenges we face as we deliver healthcare in rural Wisconsin. We appreciate his continued partnership that will help us sustain access to local care in the Northwoods. I'm not sure if you saw that. If you did, when you see something like that from someone like a Mike Schaefer, do you take note of this, or is it, yeah, that's nice?
Well, we don't get compliments very often, so anything we get is always nice. So I appreciate. I wasn't expecting that, but I appreciate Mike's comments. Obviously, I've got a great working relationship with Mike. There may be issues where we don't see perfectly on everything, but in terms of the industry and their challenges, I mean, trying to fix rural problems is why I'm in office, and his happen to be rural healthcare problems. So it's not even just that issue. It's all sorts of issues we're constantly talking about. How do we open up more nursing beds to get people out of the hospitals faster, since hospitals aren't reimbursed when people have to stay longer? And then one of the challenges is we just don't have the workforce, and it's much more difficult to get someone to move to Spooner to be a respiratory therapist than it is Eau Claire, right? And so if we can identify ways to get them up there for part of their training or their clinicals, we know they're more likely to stay. And so a lot of these hospitals can't take on that extra burden without help. So that's what these grants will do. And they're similar to grants that we tried to push when I was in the assembly too. So if I can get that practitioner to come to Spooner, do a rotation, and maybe they'll fall in love with the community and say, you know what, when I graduate, I want to stay here. Or maybe that hospital offers them a job on the spot. You fit really well with the culture of the building here. You got a great work ethic. Once you're done, you've got a job here at Spooner Health. So those are the kind of opportunities these grants can open up for our small hospitals that just don't have the wherewithal to do it on their own.
The second one, and I just put this up this morning, and I forgot to actually capture the headline, but it was North Lakes. Essentially, North Lakes Community Clinic has a location in Rice Lake. And in this, and I'm pulling this right from the press release that was published on DrydenWire.com this morning, North Lakes is continuing a wonderful service, said Brad Grosseth, president of Marshfield Medical Center, Rice Lake. We are appreciative of the many people at North Lakes, the health system, the community, including Senator Romaine Quinn and Representative Dave Armstrong, who came together to help make continuation of pediatric therapies in Rice Lake possible. So that was a very nice shout out from Brad. What role did you play in this? Were you surprised? Like, hey, I didn't even do anything, but hey, I'll take the credit or something, right? What role did you play in this?
So this kind of started, I got a frantic Facebook message from somebody I know saying, you have to call me right now. My kid is losing services. I don't know what we're going to do. And that's what opened my eyes to the fact that Marshfield offered this service in Rice Lake Kids Club. You know, those pediatric services for our youth that struggle with a number of issues. It could be a whole host of things. And so that's when I said, we'll definitely look into it. I got on the horn immediately with my connection in Madison with Marshfield Clinic, trying to work with them to say, you know, how do we make sure this service is available? And basically the answer at the time was, well, the service is offered in Marshfield, so people in Rice Lake can drive if they want to continue that service. Well, that's not an option for many people. And why can't people from Marshfield drive to Rice Lake for a service, right? I get so sick of that, whether it's Chapter 51, mental health beds, you got to drive someone to Winnebago. You know, why don't we make someone from Madison drive to Rice Lake for a service for once? So that part I get sick of. So I started getting a lot of other calls from a lot of other families, really upset the service was disappearing. I heard from one mother and she said, you know, Romaine, we finally got to a point, you know, where my child can sit through and watch an entire movie with our family, or she can finally eat pancakes for breakfast, because before the texture of the syrup or the pancakes was something that we just couldn't work through. So, I mean, you don't realize how lucky you have it if you have a child that doesn't struggle with certain things. But then beyond that, to have a service in a community. So immediately, like I said, called Marshfield Clinic. I called Dave in the assembly and I said, we got to do something. And that's when I reached out to North Lakes Clinic, because I know they can offer services sometimes because they're reimbursed differently. And so they're already doing that in Cumberland. They're offering mental health services that Cumberland Health couldn't afford to continue. And now they're going to offer these services for our kiddos in Barron County that Marshfield Clinic couldn't afford to continue. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about the results, and families are getting the care they need again.
Is this, we hear oftentimes, or at least I do, that people that go into, everyone kind of has their own thing. We had, in terms of when you're elected and you're in the assembly or in the Senate, you kind of have your passion. We know Representative Dave Armstrong, it's always been, not always, but really focuses a lot on housing, economic development, jobs, etc., which makes sense because of his other gig. Gay Magnifici, nursing, etc. So everyone kind of has their focus. Was this a focus of yours? Was healthcare, specifically rural healthcare, or that just kind of developed over time? And the more people like North Lakes and Spooner Health, etc., you start hearing more, and it's okay. Like, this wasn't like my quote-unquote passion or the thing I wanted to be a part of, but we got to do something now. So was this something that you went into knowing I want to fix, or was actually because they reached out to you and others reached out to you that it just kind of evolved organically?
I would say it definitely just evolved organically. I mean, I don't have a background in healthcare by any means. I'm not I wasn't a healthcare professional by trade, but, everything we work on is rural in nature. And so you make it your thing, right? So whether it's a struggle for broadband access, a struggle to see the provider that you need, a struggle to, you name it, all the issues we work on just have a rural flair in nature because our problems tend to be just a little bit more unique across the board. So, and as your job as a legislator, I always say, you can't know every issue in and out, but you have to know a little about a lot, like whether it's agriculture, logging, real estate, healthcare, public education. So you got to know a little about a lot. And then of course there's certain areas that, some of us have an expertise in the legislature, and then there's certain areas that just kind of grow on you. So, and you tend to just kind of take the torch and run with those kinds of things.
Well, speaking of things down in Madison and the legislature, so at the end of last month's show, the budget was sent to the governor, and we figured next month, which is now today, we would be talking about what he does with that budget. And I believe a lot of things were signed, and there was 50 or 51 vetoes that were in there. I don't know where you want to kind of start with that, but how about we just start with, I guess, an overall, because you did have a couple of press releases you sent out following that. I wanted to get your some of the reasonings as to why you sent those out and what was kind of that message behind those. But first, your overall, when you saw this, when you because you get to see it, I don't know, before media, I'm assuming you do, like you know what's going to be vetoed, you know what's passing. When you see this, your first thoughts were what?
Yeah, and we don't know ahead of time.
Oh.
We learn as soon as it's released, and Wisp Politics posts it, and we start digging through it. So we're never really given a heads up. Now, certain things you can kind of guess if the governor, has been not supportive of a particular initiative. You're not going to hold your breath. You're assuming it's going to come out. But there were a lot of items that I was really surprised by, which is why I sent, I would say, a fairly harsh press release on the first one. But
yeah, but if people are wondering, the headline was, and I even brought this up with Tom Tiffany when he was on, because he comes on the second Thursday of the month. Your headline was Senator Quinn, quote, Evers stabs Northern Wisconsin in the back.
Yeah, that's fairly harsh. But I was
well, it's hyperbole certainly, but
right.
That was, and that's what I talked with Congressman Tiffany about. That you usually don't see that kind of reaction from you. You're usually pretty measured in all this, so it has to be quite a bit for you to say something like that.
Well, yeah, and it was, and there's still a little blood from the wound yet, but we're trying to.
Oh, I know. I got a whole bunch of hate mail for that too. Because some people still think I write those. I'm like, no, it's a press. Sure. It says right there, it's a press release. So I liked it better when you weren't in the legislature. I get a lot less hate mail.
That's so funny. Yeah, well, a number of things that are particular to Northern Wisconsin that I never dreamed the governor would oppose. Right, so we secured some money for our fish hatcheries in Northern Wisconsin. There's a fish hatchery we know in Spooner, the Tommy Thompson hatchery, but there's also one in Brule. And there's also one near Bayfield called Les Voigt. And both of them are fairly run down, especially Brule. They've been, I would argue, neglected, not blaming anybody. There's just, if there's not the funds there, they're not kept up. And in Bayfield, the Les Voigt facility is very important for our fish hatcheries, both in Superior and Lake Michigan. And right now it's operating at 30% capacity. So state taxpayers are paying staff to run a facility that can only operate at 30% because we won't invest in the necessary infrastructure to get them some more water. Long story short, they used to pull water from Lake Superior. They can't anymore, so they pull from a well. So they can't get enough water to fill that hatchery back up all the way. So I'm like, why aren't you drilling another well? Why haven't we done a study to find you more water? Why don't we go back to using more Lake Superior water and just find a way to mitigate some of the concerns you have with that? And it's been 12 years. Like, who hasn't asked the question? So we put monies aside, $2.5 million, not an incredible amount of money, to breathe some life back into Brule, and then get a study done or get some water capacity up in Bayfield. Governor strikes that out because he said we shouldn't. I think his reasoning was we shouldn't tell the DNR how they have to bond for their own facilities. But I'm like, the DNR exists because of the state legislature, right? And so if the state legislature tells the DNR to do something, or the governor, they're supposed to do it. So we're exercising our authority to say, hey, you have two facilities. Here's $2.5 million. Go fix it. Nope. So I don't. That was pretty frustrating.
Well, and again, you got $2.5 million. Well, how much was the? I mean, that's a drop in the bucket, right? I mean, I know it sounds like a lot. It is a lot. I mean, no kidding. $2.5 million is a lot of money. But in terms of the budget, that's nothing.
No, not. I mean, it's not even a drop. It's like a
right. So
drop,
this must have been, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. So tell me, I'm looking at this, then it must have been, if that really wasn't a factor, the money really wasn't a factor, and I'm just assuming that, then there must have been another reason. Is it a political reason? Is it well, he's a Democrat now. Is it that? Is it just something I want to show that I can have more? I had a lot of vetoes to say, those Republicans, I tell you. And that was one that was such a small amount of money that it's not that big a deal. Has there been discussions in your caucuses or the Republicans, or you have an opinion? Why was that, of all things, vetoed?
I'm sure it was just petty, 100%. There's the governor wanted to spend like another $6 billion on top of what we offered him, so it was not a money issue, right? That guy was
Right.
going to spend every penny we had, so that wasn't it. We secured Representative Sappick and I had 2.1 million for both Amnicon and Pattison State Park. This one really irked me. So he was in Superior, in front of a reporter. The reporter asked him from the Superior Telegram. Her name's Shelley.
I saw that video.
Governor Evers, do you support the proposal to send more money to our parks, Pattison and Amnicon? And he said, of course.
Yep.
I support more money for all parks. Now, he didn't say, no, I don't, because other parks need more money first. He said, yes, I support the projects, and I support funding for all tourism, so on and so forth. And he turned around and then just vetoed it after he said he supported it. So I think in the press release I said, do you read your vetoes that your staff hand you before you sign them? Or were you just lying to the reporter? Like, it's one of the two, right? There's no other way around it. You either didn't mean it, what you said, because you were put on the spot, then just admit that. Say, you know what? I should have looked into it more. I said I supported it, but I didn't.
I think that would have been fine. People could accept that. Seriously.
Right. Caught me off guard. I thought Pattison was in Southeast Wisconsin. I would have supported it then.
Oh, ouch.
And, or you just didn't. You don't read what you sign. Like, so which one is it? Just say it. But to be like, well, other parks could need money too. Well, yeah, that's great. Then those legislators can ask for money for their parks. That's not my job. So why would you veto out a project you said you supported? So that one was fairly upsetting. A lot of people in Superior and Douglas County really love both Amnicon Falls and Pattison Park, and they know it needs help. And that's actually stuff I heard on the campaign trail. Like, stuff's running down. We need new guardrails, the buildings, updates, things like that. And again, 2.1 million is not an incredibly insane amount of money.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for that. And then I think one of the most egregious was, beyond that, was he vetoed GTA money for townships. And so townships, general transportation aid, is funding that goes specifically, it's a set dollar amount per mile that they use for roads. Not just for the building of roads, but for snow plowing, salting, sanding, crack filling, seal coating, all that good stuff to make the roads last longer. And so on top of our shared revenue and all that stuff, we gave some uppers to different entities, again, for infrastructure. And it was a 2% increase. A 2% increase to our townships, and he vetoed it out. And I'm like, what? And so I called the Towns Association. They said we were given no heads up. The governor never indicated that this was an issue. And he claimed that some program was cut back in 2011, and that needs help. So it's not fair that we help this one. I'm like, then why don't you propose helping one
them,
and
right.
leave this one alone? Right. So that one didn't make any sense. And I know the Towns Association was pretty upset. I think they've had follow-up meetings with the governor and his staff saying, what the heck? Like, usually they'll give a heads up, especially like in association. They're not going to call me, right? Because I'm a legislator, but they'll call the county's association and say, hey, you guys, I know you wanted this, but we're only going to give you this. But he didn't even have the conversation. So that part was frustrating. But on the bright side is that we have an opportunity to override those vetoes, which is part of the reason why I ran for the Senate, because once I won, we got a veto-proof majority in the Senate. Now, we don't have
not in the Assembly. I thought I read something on With Politics or somewhere that pretty much there's nothing that can be done at this point. Maybe I misread that.
What I would say is it will give my colleagues an opportunity to fix a mistake. And so we are going to have the votes in the Senate. Like I said, we're just 1+. And then we're going to send it to the Assembly. And now I can't see many legislators caring about my fish hatcheries up here. But for instance, the Towns Association money, I want Representative Doyle in the La Crosse area to have to vote and say, am I going to defend the governor's veto, or am I going to give my townships more money?
Oh, sure.
And so we're going to put our colleagues on the spot, and you're going to have to choose. Do you represent your district, or do you represent the governor in his office? And so I think that among some of the other vetoes that specifically were for our area, I'm going to ask my Senate counterparts to hopefully tee those back up.
And when will that be happening, if and when it happens?
Probably September.
Okay. Are you guys not finished for the summer? Explain what it is that you guys are doing now, because the budget stuff is, you finished up. That was the biggest thing. I know there was a lot more, but I mean, is there like a summer break or something?
mean, it's not really a break. We're technically in session. It doesn't work the same way Congress does.
Okay.
But like I said, in the summer, the building's very quiet. Most people go back home because then we can participate in our county fairs, our parades, our community events. Some committees are still holding hearings in Madison over the summer. Some legislators don't like that because they want to be home. We had to hold one in housing on updating for our commercial building codes last week or the week before.
Yeah, I was texting with your counterpart, Rob Staffschulte. I had asked him a question about something. He was like, I'm actually in a housing meeting, and Quinn is actually chairing this right now. So I proceeded to say very inappropriate things. Because having to listen to you, that was just great.
Yep. So like today, even after this show, I've got to jump on an ag committee hearing for some appointments, which should be interesting.
Why interesting?
I plan on making a fuss on a couple of those people just because. But yeah, so the Senate, the fun part about the Senate versus the Assembly is that we get a say on who gets appointed to many of these boards. And so tomorrow, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, or not tomorrow, today, I just said today.
Yeah, right.
A lot of their appointees are up again. And so in terms of those that sit on the board for ag purposes, I'm going to ask them, what are your feelings about small dairies, about our family farms? Do you think they should exist in the landscape? And do you support policies that support our small farmers? Or do you think they should just go by the wayside in an effort to get bigger because it's just a commodity? And those are kind of questions that these people should have to answer. And I don't think they're going to like it, but that's why I'm on the committee.
Well, that's your job, right, to ask those questions. What was the, other than those, you also had another press release, and maybe that was one that you were referring to, but on July 12th, you had one that says Evers makes a bad situation worse. Was that regarding one of the things you talked about, or what was that one about?
Yeah, that was not a good one. So I think we talked very briefly on your show that we have some tribal tax issues going on in Bayfield and Ashland County. And long story short, the county and the state was taxing tribal members on their homes as long as it had been sold out of trust land at one point, and it would go back on the tax rolls, even if a Native American bought it back. And so these people were paying property taxes. The court ruled that they never should have had to pay property taxes at all. And so now you have a situation where county governments, town governments, they built their community on a tax infrastructure that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, sure.
And so now you've got, like, let's say in the city of Spooner, 85% of your homeowners no longer had to pay taxes. So the 15% that live there are paying for the police, for fire, for EMS, for roads.
Real quick, does that mean those 50% have to pay more to make up for, or is it now we have to take that money away from, because they're not going to make those 50% pay more? It just means all that money now is gone, so we have to cut a whole bunch of positions or something. Which one is that?
No, they are paying it right now. So the first year, their taxes jacked 200 to 300%. And so now the Department of Revenue is going to go back and say you shouldn't have paid that much because this year we should have taken those properties off. It's very complicated in terms of a community's total evaluation, equalized value, what their mill rate is. And then, of course, you've got all these entities, schools, counties, towns. But the problem is going forward is if we do nothing, people will lose their homes. And so we know from Governor Evers' own DOR that an average homeowner in the town of Sanborn, for instance, let's say you own a $200,000 house, nothing immaculate, and in this market that doesn't buy you much.
No, not now.
But in the town of Sanborn, your property taxes going forward will be $7,400 a year.
And what would have been normal? I don't own a home,
so I would say a $200,000 home in Barron County out in a township, you're probably paying $2,200, maybe $2,500 in taxes.
So again, this is not specific data, numbers, etc., but ballparking here, $5,000 increase. Ouch.
Right. And so, like, for instance, that's $600 a month just in property taxes. That's not your house payment. That's not your insurance. That's just your taxes.
So that's what you mean by they may lose their homes. Because we can't we can't afford that. I mean, most people that I know anyway aren't putting away thousands of dollars a month in savings because, I don't know, I got nothing to do with my money. Most people aren't in that situation, especially right now where everything's so freaking expensive. Yeah, that's like a deal. That's a deal breaker for a lot. That puts people over the limit.
And we have retirees We've got young families. People don't make as much money in northern Wisconsin as other parts of the state. I mean, people aren't even paying that high property taxes in the the suburbs of Madison on certain houses.
So how does this tie into what happened in the budget and Evers and his vetoes?
So we put language in the budget, which doesn't fix it all, but it's a start to say your township, the town of Sanborn, we're going to set your levy, what you're allowed to tax your people, and we're going to limit your capability to borrow more money because communities can borrow money to get around their levy limits. Because I can go out and buy a fire truck and throw it on my debt service and not have to raise taxes for it. And then we wanted to prevent that township from charging other entities back, from doing chargebacks. Now, real quickly, what's a chargeback? So not only do these handful of people have to pay the whole bill going forward, these people that no longer have to pay want 5 years back taxes paid back to them. So not only do they not pay anything now, they want their last 5 years of taxes back. And so, again, it's very complicated, but I'm trying to prevent this township from going back and charging the school district or charging these taxpayers another $1 million to pay themselves back money that they think they shouldn't have had to pay. Now, yes, a court decision claimed that they never had to pay property taxes, but in my mind, in 2023, when you're part of a community, you live in a community, we share in the cost of those services. So we all help pay for the plowing of our roads. We all pay for county services, health and human services, whether we like it or not. That's part of being a community. And so we can't expect the handful left to foot the whole bill. So we have to do something. And the governor struck our language out, so we're going to go back to the drawing board. But it will get to the point where, and I floated the idea, we might have to dissolve the township.
I was just going to ask, like, if this actually comes to fruition, and nobody's going to be, I mean, most people, I don't know this town. We say Sandburg? No.
Sanborn.
Sanborn. Yep. I don't know how many people are in this, how many residents in this township?
Oh,
like
gosh.
500, 10,000, ballpark it.
Yeah, I think there was around, between non-tribal members, I think there's maybe a couple hundred, if that.
Yeah, so I mean, so there could be a situation where they're just all going to have to move. But then when that happens, or a lot of these people who now have to pay for all of this, and if they have to then sell and then move, what happens to that town? I mean, at some point, somebody has to pay for some of the services. But if everybody's gone that is supposed to be paying and others aren't, which, whatever, that's up to you guys. You guys figure it out. But what happens to that town? Because I feel like they wouldn't even have a town anymore. So you're saying dissolve them. How does that work?
So the problem is these people can't move because they can't sell their home, because if they can't afford their taxes, the next buyer can't.
Right. Who would want to buy that place?
So Ben Dryden's not going to go up there and say, oh, look, I'll give you a sweetheart deal on this because you can't afford it, because, Ben, you can't afford it either.
I get it.
So they're going to lose their homes. And I think part of it's not a secret that I know there are probably some tribal members that are just waiting these people out. They'll buy their houses back on pennies on the dollar.
Yes.
And they don't have to pay property taxes.
Yes,
so
that's what I would do if I was that's smart.
Right. So we're just trying to prevent. I really hope everyone can come together and say, you know, the tribe will get money from the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, to help with the cost of some of these services. I know they've worked with the townships in the past, the town of Russell and Bayfield. They are today. The town of Sanborn had agreements before where the tribe would help with the cost of those services. But we have to get to a point and say, okay, what is a reasonable amount of tax to pay? And then that's the limit. And then going forward, that's all the money we got. And we have to find a solution if we need more. But the solution is not to drive people from their homes. And so that's what I'm doing everything I can to prevent from happening. Right
I
now.
see. And do you think that is it going to end well, you think? I mean, what's the next step in this?
Well, I can't reveal my whole hand on your show.
Okay. Sorry.
But we've got some things in the works.
Okay.
To try to do that. But yeah, we're going to have another meeting with the governor to walk him through things and say, hey, where are you at? So I met with him. We talked about it. I know he's aware of it. He said he's going to talk to the tribe and get back to me. Never got back to me. I've reached out to the tribe. They don't call me back. So obviously I've poked the bear a little bit. I put some pressers out, really raised awareness about the issue. And again, it's not to poke anyone in the eye. It's to get people to come to the table and say, hey, we have to do something here. And hopefully we can make that happen.
In Barron County. I've gotten a whole bunch of messages from people, and I have no idea what they're really talking about. The Barron County Republican Party in Barron County. That there's, I'm hearing a whole bunch of things. I'm assuming, you live in Barron County. You must know what's going on. What's going on with the Barron County Republican Party? Anything?
Well,
or is it just like random, like people like, you should really report on them. Like, report on what? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a mess, unfortunately. But so I'm taking off my senator hat now.
Yeah.
Because I don't spend state time on politics stuff. You have to separate the two.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you last time you were on, but you were in Madison. So I'm like, well, I don't think you're limited on some of those things. And again, I don't really know what's going on. Something about maybe it's being split, which I think that's kind of a thing for a lot of Republicans right now, much less Republican parties. The half is this and the other half. So I just assume that's what it was about.
Yeah, but it's not. I think someone portrayed it that way. But, I mean, we have growing pains in our party. The left does too. You've got certain factions of the left that want to go full boat socialists, and you have some Democrats in there that are saying, time out, pump the brakes on this. It's not who we are. And on our side, we've got some differences of opinions too, which I think is good. There should be room in the Republican Party for people that like Trump, for people that want a different candidate, for people that have all sorts of ideas. We've always tried to be a big tent party, and so we've got a problem with our leadership in Barron County right now. It's not even a political issue; it's leadership. And there's a whole bunch of issues: lack of transparency, lack of giving membership the ability to weigh in on issues, whole sorts of issues there. And we are working on a solution to try to make sure membership can be heard.
Okay.
So I'll leave that at that.
Okay. Well, yeah. And when people say, you should do a story, as soon as I know what's going on, or if there's going to be a resolution at some point, let me know, or have someone let me know, and I'll be happy to do something. I just don't really know what's going on.
Yep.
But hopefully that'll get taken care of. Because I've noticed that, and I don't know if it was because of Donald Trump, who's divisive, et cetera, and he has a very big following, but it almost seems like the Republican Party, I wouldn't say is fully split, but it seems that way, outside looking in. I'm not in politics, but yeah, it's kind of a split thing I see. Mm-hmm. It's I don't want to say Reagan Republicans, but there's the conservative Republicans, and then there's the Trump Republicans. Yeah, and I feel like most of the things they have in common, so I'm not really sure why there's a divide to begin with. Why do you think there is? Why is there such a divide from some Republicans and other Republicans when I don't think I've ever seen this before in my life, it being split that much? We had the Tea Party and stuff, right?
Yep.
But that wasn't that big of a split. This one seems like a lot more, and I don't understand why.
I don't think the Tea Party was even so much a split back then. I think it was a movement that really brought us back to our roots. I think it's always important to have a wake-up call. Sometimes you get these legislators at a national level that sit in their seat forever and they forget why they're Republican, right? They continue to grow government. They continue to allow things to go in, and they never take a stand. And I know a lot of our party's been sick of it. We're always told, well, we just need the House. We just need the Senate. We just need the presidency. And then we'll get our agenda done. And then the voters will hand it to them, and we sit on our hands and we don't deliver. And when Democrats gain full control, they go to the mat. They don't care what electoral losses they have. They will ram through their agenda as fast as they can when they have control. We're always worried about the next election, but it's like, if we don't win it, you get nothing. So get your agenda done. So I think that's what the Tea Party movement was really born out of. And now today it's not even so much an issue. I think it's personalities, right? It's coming down to the president, because I don't know of anyone that wants to see a different candidate besides the president, doesn't support the issues the president supports, right? So I think it's coming down to that. And so what I always try to implore people is, try to focus on the issues. Someone else wants a different standard bearer, doesn't make them a rhino or a fake Republican, or that they're not conservative. And on the other side too, I mean, I try to tell people, if you want to see someone else besides President Trump, it doesn't mean that people that support the president are bad people, because you agree on almost every issue. Right. So it's just a matter of who you want for your messenger. And someday President Trump will be gone. Someday Ron DeSantis will be gone. Someday, Scott Walker was gone. Like in Wisconsin, it was the Scott Walker era. Well, Governor Walker is gone. Everyone takes their turn. And so we should invest so much in a person, and we should double down on our ideals that define why are we Republicans? Why are we conservative?
Do you think your colleagues share that view? Your Republican colleagues?
I think it's a mix. I've had colleagues that were like never Trumpers, that they just were
sure.
done. They would never support the president at all. I think there's a mixed bag, but I just try to tell people we're a party of values, not a party of a particular person, and we should try to focus on what those issues are that define us, that make us different.
That's interesting what you said. I'm not gonna forget that, even though I've already forgotten it. But I think I remember it. The wordage that you used is so. I think you're referring to Republicans focus on the issues, but it's just kind of a question of who do you want to be the one delivering the message.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good way to look at it. I've never thought about it that way before, where it's not like their issues, they're the president or they're the governor, but it's who do you want delivering that, whether that's a Democratic part or a Democrat looking at their candidates or a Republican looking at their candidates. That's fascinating. I really like that. Well, we're almost up against our time. Anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about before we get on to what's coming up next?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. And I would say even with the veto conversation where, frustrating as it may be, including his vetoing of like 95% of the tax cuts and some other things, overall, it's still a pretty darn good budget. We invested in our schools, our low spending schools. We invested more to buy down property taxes to make sure taxpayers aren't bearing the brunt of that. And we've got a number of reforms in, conservative reforms, especially through the shared revenue deal. Our small communities are getting new shared revenue that they can put back into their EMS services, their fire services, their police services that we've needed for quite some time. So there's still a lot of the wins in the budget, but we can always do a better job.
Well, isn't that kind of, I think it was Adam Jarko when we were doing that Politically Speaking show a few years ago with Adam and Patty Shockner once a month. And I think Adam had brought up somewhere in there that he likes the fact that, Republicans don't get everything they want. Democrats don't get everything they want. The compromise is kind of where it's at. So would you say this is one of those that, you already talked about some of the things that are happening in our area that you weren't super big fan of course, and you're hoping to try to remedy some of those things, but now you're saying it's kind of also, but there were a lot of good things. So was this kind of one of those? Overall, it's fine. We didn't get everything we wanted, but, it was fine.
Well, yeah. Overall, again, yeah, lots of wins, but I would say we should have a give and take on broad policy, right? We shouldn't have to have a give and take about particular issues that affect us in northern Wisconsin. So that, I get it. We can have a philosophical debate on income taxes, right? Who should pay what percent? But we shouldn't do a give and take on, okay, the budget's overall good, but your projects are now in the trash, right?
I see.
So that's what I don't like. And that's what, we're going to bring it back. I know I've got the votes on our side. That's the part too. It's already hard enough to get my own colleagues to care about issues in Brule, right? Or Bayfield or Superior or Rice Lake. And so once we do that, to then have it get thwarted again from another entity for literally no reason, or even they supported it and then decided not to at the last minute, like that part's frustrating. So we'll see what we can do.
You brought up education. I thought I saw a headline somewhere shortly after this that education is funded for something about 400 years. I never did get around to clicking on it to see what it was about. What is that about? What for 400 years? That just seems like obviously a very long time. What does that mean?
Yeah, I will not be in the Senate when that expires. So I will have expired long before then. But yeah, the governor took a tweak. And so we negotiated a large education deal that funded choice schools, funded public schools, invested an incredible amount of money, over $1 billion. And part of that investment was coming in the aid of per pupil funding per year. And so we are giving $325 per pupil. And so any district can do the math. How many kiddos do you have? Times that by $325. And that's how much money you're going to get for that year, which is just for that categorical aid. And so we have to put the year in there, right? You're going to get $325 for the 2023-2024 year, and then $325 for the next school year. So he went in there and vetoed the hyphen and said, you're going to get $325 per pupil through 2,325 or 2,425.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because that's going to be worth like nothing in. I mean, 325. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Please finish.
Right.
I interrupted. I just don't understand. $325 is going to be like $3.25 in 150 years rather than. I'm just saying.
Right, and I think the governor has always wanted. He said he wants more predictable, ongoing funding for schools. I get that, but for instance, like we look at COVID. We never know when there's going to be a next event. The feds could dump billions into our schools. And so that's like the last 2 years, the state's backed off on that. We said, burn up your federal dollars, then we'll backfill you with state dollars. What if that happens again? What if there's a situation where we can't spend that $325 per pupil in that given year? Right now, he locks us into that without any discussion about the current state of affairs today when we take it up again. So I get what he's doing, but I think it's not going to help negotiations next year. When we tee those off and talk about schools again next year, that's not going to help those negotiations at all. Mm-hmm. But the governor gets to do what he wants to do.
It is what it is until it isn't.
Right.
So we do this show the last Thursday of every month. You come on and talk about all the things in Madison and, of course, the 25th Senate District. What do you think we're going to be talking about next month?
Gosh, well, I think by next month we'll have a number of bills drafted and teed up to really talk about what we're going to do in the fall session. I know my package of Embrace Them Both bills, supporting pregnancy help centers, etc. We'll have a hearing by then. We could talk about the Superior Expo District that Representative Sappick and I have been working on to try to pass that bill for the city of Superior. So we'll have more to talk about, and of course, all the events that go on. This weekend is the Washburn County Fair.
Yeah.
The following weekend
starts today, I think.
Hagen Fun Days. Can't miss that. But every community's got their own little shindig at some point, so look them up and make sure to participate.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and now I think about it, I should have had that on the list because I've seen several bills that are being discussed or proposed, I should say, about. I don't want to say it's under the umbrella of. I don't want to say abortion, but it kind of is, right? It's about I wish I should have written that down. I'll have it ready for next time. Maybe they've gotten somewhere. What's that?
Yeah, those were my bills. Yep.
Were they seriously?
Yep.
How did we not talk about it? It was something about what are some of them? One was about you can go after, like a woman could go after a rapist for child support. I thought I saw one of those.
That's a new one. Yep.
Yeah. There was just a couple this week that I saw.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, which is a good conversation to have. Is I think it's Representative Shay Shortwell. So a victim of rape can go back and force their perpetrator to pay child support. Now, we don't want you to have contact with that person, right? But we should force them to be a parent. If you're going to commit a nasty crime, you should pay for it. First of all, he or she should be in prison.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone that does that should ever be let out. Period.
How could they pay if they're in prison?
Right. Well, it's they owe a debt to society, and someday when they get out, which they will, which they should never get out in my mind, when you take something from someone like that, that they'll never get back, you never deserve to get out and see the light of day again. But if they do, there's a responsibility. There's a debt that's owed that they should forever have to pay. So that's interesting, Bill. We're going to take a look at it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's a few more. Yeah. I'll be a little more prepared next time. Man, I wish I would have remembered that because there's a couple of them that have come up. And you just said you had a few bills, but yeah. That'll give us a lot to talk about next month.
We got stuff to talk about. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Romaine, thanks so much, man, for coming on.
Have a great day.
As always, special thank you to Wisconsin's 25th Senate District Senator Romaine Quinn for joining us for a chat today, and he does the last Thursday of every month. Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back next Tuesday for another exciting episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching and have a blessed day.